all we can say about Oda after chapter 1059 is
he's the best player in the game. It's just that simple. There's nothing that Oda can't do. He will defend your best player. He will shoot from the perimeter. He will get all in your money. He is the most complete player in the game today, bar none.
The man was in his bag each and every page, and the theories that can come out of this with Boa's fruit, Blackbeard's next move, Koby's fate, and more could all be game-changing. But before we get into it, please like and subscribe if you want to keep seeing more content just like this. I'm not sure if I'm going to do reviews like this every week, but I'm definitely going to do them for every chapter that's as big as this one. On to the theories.
Yeah.
There's so many huge things to talk about, so I'm going to quickly touch on one of the smaller parts from the beginning just to get it out of the way, which was Marco getting dropped off at Sphinx Island. While it's nice to see why he wasn't there at the send-off in Wano, I think his dialogue with Luffy actually hints that the crew will be headed there too, or at least, somewhere close by. Marco mentioned how Ace would be proud to see how far Luffy has come, and of course this could just be a sentimental moment between the two, but we also know that Ace's grave is on Sphinx Island, where Marco is going. And the One Piece world map seems to point that our crew is going to go in that direction. So I still wouldn't be shocked if we see Luffy pull up to Ace's grave before we finally kick off that final saga. And of course, we get to see Yamato give us her true reasoning for staying, which is nice but also disappointing since I don't see how Wano would ever get a force strong enough that makes Yamato feel like she can leave. This makes it difficult for her to join the crew, and I definitely wanted her to do that, so I don't really know how this is going to go down. But now it's time to talk about the meat of the chapter, Koby and Blackbeard's invasions of Amazon Lily. And first off, Oda, this was just a 10 out of 10. There were so many theories about how Koby and Boa's altercation would go down, whether Koby could even beat her, whether they just share their love for Luffy and not even fight at all, or maybe we'd even learn that Koby doesn't even like girls, so he would just be immune to her powers to begin with. But nope, in typical Oda fashion, none of those things happened, and Blackbeard came in to steal the show. And if you're a fan of the channel, you may think that my idea that Blackbeard is headed to Alabasta is dead in the water, since we just saw him on Amazon Lily. And sure, I do need to hold an L that what he referred to in the paper was Alabasta, but the events of chapter 1059 happened a few weeks ago, during our Alliance's training arc before the raid. And Amazon Lily is on the Grand Line side of the Red Line. Blackbeard was just a short trip from Alabasta after he left with Koby, and since he's aware that the warlords are being chased by the world government, and that the SSG is really not to be messed with, all the reasons I had for picking Alabasta are still very much in play, and potentially even stronger, since we know he had the time to get there after learning everything in Amazon Lily. He could have gone to Alabasta, and roughly speaking, could be back to Wano sometime near the present time so that he can get Pluton. But we will have to see. Either way, I love what Oda is doing with Blackbeard. But now we literally have to talk about the SSG, or the Seraphims, and yet again, Oda curves every single theory in the community and uses childlike Lunarian versions of Boa and Mihawk. And I think the word Seraphims is very important. Seraphims are just the plural version of the word seraph, which is also known as the Burning One, and is a heavenly being tied at least somewhat into Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and probably some others as well. In Christianity, they are the highest rank among angels, and they're basically the protectors of the throne of God. Obviously, this makes the Seraphims an absolutely perfect name for these Lunarian beings that protect the celestial dragons and their throne atop the world government, since they do believe themselves to be gods after all. I think it's safe to say that they'll have other versions of these as well. I mean, since these are former warlords, I've seen many people throw the idea around that we will see a Seraphim version of each former warlord, like Croc, Doflamingo, and maybe even Buggy. However, I want to throw another idea out there. That it won't just be the warlords, but former slaves and current marines as well. I mean, Boa used to be a slave, and Mihawk has always been pretty cooperative with the world government when it came to his warlord status, especially compared to some of the other warlords. So I'm not sure if these two are the best evidence to conclude that the Seraphims will be just warlords. I mean, maybe a lot of this is just aesthetic, so that the Seraphims literally replace the warlords, But the Mihawk one had some good sword skills, which shows that their real-life counterpart's strength is a factor. So if I was Vegapunk, I'd be spending a lot more time on a PX Garp or a Kainu before I worried about a PX Buggy or PX Weevil. But maybe that's just me. Boa's sisters also said that these things didn't even have a scratch on them, which makes me think that they're Logia types potentially. I mean, sure, they could just be so fast that they didn't get hit at all, but I think them being Logia also makes sense. We even saw Blackbeard use Haki to clash with one of them, so I think that idea holds some weight. We also saw one make a huge slash into Amazon Lily, so they also have some insane strength as well. And we will talk more about those in a second, but wasn't it interesting how Blackbeard mentioned the dark skin, white hair, and black wings, thus implying that he already knows about Lunarians? For someone as in the know as Blackbeard, this isn't a huge surprise, but it does add to Blackbeard's mystique and why he barely reveals all the stuff he knows, because he apparently knows a lot of stuff. I think this further adds to the idea that Blackbeard can read the poneglyphs like I said in the last video, so make sure to go check that one out. Eventually, Koby gets the pacifista to stand down, which is pretty cool in and of itself, and we get what is definitely an iconic panel with Blackbeard holding Boa by her neck. This scene was just such a roller coaster, and I'm shocked all of this was in one chapter. And after some discussions, Boa reveals that if she dies, none of the statues will be resurrected. Maybe she's lying here just so she can survive, but I'm going to take her words at face value for now, and we'll definitely touch on that idea later. And despite Blackbeard's entire crew being turned to stone, he was still going to kill Boa and take her fruit. How important can that fruit be to him if he's going to risk his entire crew for it? This also shows how Blackbeard thinks, and how much of a mirror that he is to Luffy. Luffy was fine sacrificing his ride off the island to meet his crew members just to save one member of the Kuja pirates. Not even his own crew. But Blackbeard was going to sacrifice his entire crew just to get one devil fruit. But man, I just hate his crew so much. I mean, I love them in terms of how they fit in the story and their endgame potential and their strength and all that kind of stuff. But this little nefarious section of the chapter right here, especially given how beautiful Boa is supposed to be, is just some stuff of nightmares. Vasco Shot needs to keep his mouth shut. But all of the focus on Boa's fruit got me thinking. She ate that fruit while being a slave of the world government, and now the Marines and Blackbeard are coming after it. What is the secret behind her fruit that makes it so important that the world government kept it and gave it to a slave, and now Blackbeard wants it? I think this is something that might be worth its own future video, but I've already had a ton of thoughts on this, and one is that her awakening allows her to revive past statues, so she just doesn't know that she can do that yet. Or maybe the user has to die or sacrifice some lifespan to save an older statue, and the world government was using her for that so that she was expendable. Sure, a lot of this might seem like speculation, but there are just so many potential connections to make with this idea that I had to mention. Because, for example, we have this bizarre row of stone statues in MavisHdz that we saw during the Reverie, and part of me was wondering if those are old celestial dragons that they want to revive. And maybe there's even other statues tucked away in other parts of MavisHdz, such as the frozen chamber with the straw hat, and they just want to revive them as well, using her fruit's awakening. One other insane idea is that maybe the world government wanted to use her powers to turn tons of people to stone as part of their great cleansing. I know this idea is absolutely bonkers, but what if there's just a way to do a worldwide love beam, and that's what caused the Void Century in the past? Maybe she can use a video transponder snail or just bounce it off the moon or something, and then that way it hits everyone at once. And then this would also tie into why the world government chose Boa specifically. She comes from a long line of beautiful pirate empresses, and they figured that she would be perfect for the love beam if they were trying to turn a bunch of people to stone, because she would have as many people as possible thinking she's beautiful. From Blackbeard's perspective, how would he even utilize this fruit? For starters, his whole crew is ugly as hell, so there's only a couple possibilities that I could even think of. First, if he plans to use the love beam portion of the fruit, then maybe Devon can have two fruits as well, because Blackbeard found a way for his whole crew to have multiple. So then she would be able to be an attractive woman, an attractive man, or even some other type of creature, so that she can make the beam work on literally anyone. Or maybe a second option, which was pointed out by Hidden Island, maybe there's a statue of Rox somewhere and Blackbeard wants to revive it. I mean, we don't really know what happened to Rox per se, and just like the Celestial celestial dragon statues that I mentioned earlier, maybe there's a statue of rocks hidden somewhere that Blackbeard hopes to bring back. And this would also help explain why he was willing to sacrifice his whole crew just for the chance of bringing someone back who was turned to stone in the past. To him, it was all worth it to bring rocks back, even at the cost of his crew. And the last option that I could think of would be piggybacking off of the rocks idea, and that he wanted to use it to affect the poneglyphs. We don't really understand how the poneglyphs were made exactly or why they're so indestructible, but maybe part of that was the Love Beam's power. And I mean, the same could be said for the red line itself. Perhaps it's a giant snake or something that was petrified and blocked off the world, so Blackbeard wants to turn it back to a real snake or whatever it was so that the red line is gone. I also want to touch on this scene with Shaky and Rayleigh. First off, I think it's very interesting that Rayleigh just straight up admits that he couldn't beat Blackbeard one-on-one. I also love that comment from Rayleigh when he basically told Blackbeard, you know, I never really liked you, man. It was like Rayleigh was seeing very far into the future and just knew that Blackbeard was sus. But still, we all know how strong Rayleigh is, so for him to admit that, Blackbeard must be more powerful than we think. And something I skipped over earlier because I wanted to save it for now was Blackbeard's bounty, which is now just a shade under 4 billion. This was kind of odd to me since we saw his 2.2 billion berry bounty around the same time that this event even occurred. So I'm assuming that this event occurred when it was still 2.2 billion, and now it's 3.996 as a result of this Captain Koby incident, and we just saw the updated version since we saw it all as a flashback. So since it's been a few weeks and we saw how fast our crew could grow in that time frame before the raid, I wonder how much stronger Blackbeard is now than he was even at Amazon Lily when he could beat Rayleigh, apparently. But another interesting tidbit is the fact that Shaky is a prior pirate empress. ODA yet again somehow curved so many theories, mainly that she was a member of the Rocks Pirates, but we also saw that she was a pirate empress of 2 generations ago. That should imply that there was an empress between Shaky and Boa, aka the one that's 1 generation ago. And remember, Elder Neon did tell us that a prior pirate empress fell ill with love, just like Boa did for Luffy. So maybe Shaky fell in love with Roger, and that's what made her leave in the first place. And that's why she still hangs out with Rayleigh today. And no, I don't think her and Rayleigh are together, because she acts the same way towards him as everyone else. And if she was like Boa at all, even like 5%, then she would have been a lot more worried about Rayleigh while he went to go help Boa and fight Blackbeard. Also, one very cool Shaky tidbit that I found involved her comment about how progress sometimes causes new problems. I figured she was alluding to how the world is changing in positive ways, but there will be new challenges that go along with that. So I wanted to go check out some of her past dialogue. And in typical Oda fashion, back in chapter 514, during the chapter where Luffy first lands at Amazon Lily, we get a line from Shaky about how, bit by bit, the times are beginning to heave. It's like the crew being sent off to different islands was a catalyst for change, so that they could grow and become the crew that they need to be to change the world. And now that that's almost happened, the times are changing and causing these new problems that she just mentioned. You could even view this comment as a hint that she has some connection to Amazon Lily, since she says it literally 1 page before Luffy actually lands there for the first time. Shaky is a wise woman, that's all I know. But then I also want to cover the end of the chapter with the reveal that Koby has been kidnapped by Blackbeard. One of my favorite parts about the situation, and the entire altercation altogether, is that this is a direct parallel to Blackbeard's battle with Ace. Whenever he met Ace, he was actually going after Luffy and did not even understand their connection. So maybe you guys haven't caught it yet, but this is now the second time that Blackbeard has made Luffy mad without really doing it on purpose. First, he took his brother without even really understanding their connection that well. And now he attacked his sort of lover's island and kidnapped his first friend in the series. But this time, the connection to Luffy didn't even come up. I just love how Oda is able to set these connections up between Luffy and Blackbeard, despite Blackbeard never even doing it on purpose. That's just amazing storytelling, and that connection makes me think that this stop at Amazon Lily should have even been a little more obvious than we thought. And one last idea I'd like to throw out there is about Blackbeard's plan with Koby. This was a few weeks ago, meaning that the Cross Guild has come into play since then, so selling Koby to the Cross Guild, where they find out about Koby's connection to Luffy somehow, and then trying to trade him him to the Straw Hats for the poneglyph rubbings or something makes a lot of sense to me. Maybe Koby has a moment of retort to Blackbeard where he says something like, "You're not even gonna be the Pirate King, Luffy is." But Koby strikes me as someone with a cooler head than that, so I doubt that would happen. But I would also like it if the Cross Guild or the Blackbeard pirates got some intel like, hey, Koby and Luffy actually fought over 2 years ago, so I really doubt they have any kind of strong connection now. Which could set up for a great callback to the beginning of the story, because that action may end up saving Koby or Luffy from something. Well, please don't forget to drop a like and subscribe, because that's all I had for this video. But there's plenty more coming down the pipe, and maybe you'll be interested in one of these two videos that you should probably already see on the screen. Later.